Man, isn't this pretty? I'm gonna let you enjoy this view for a few more seconds. Because once this view is disturbed, it will probably not be restored to the end of this video. They say that looks are in the eyes of the beholder, but you know what my opinion on that is. Who are you kidding? It's the same girls that turn heads in the shopping mall. It's the same cars that turn heads. You know where I'm going with this. So I can confidently tell you that out of these two reels, the Stella is the better looking reel by a safe margin. Okay, this is easily the best looking Shimano reel on the market. I mean, the color, I have good light in the room right now, and I know it looks shiny and expensive. It looks like a oversized Rolex, but it looks even better in person if you can imagine that. It looks like something that costs $5,000. Now the Daiwa over here, still a good looking reel, but one of my subscribers said Daiwa this time went a little lazy, and I cannot find a better way to put it. Daiwa did go a little lazy. They just dipped the whole reel in chrome, and it's not as clear that this is the best looking reel in the Daiwa family, because there is a lot of good looking Daiwas. Even if you compare it with the Luvias, I'll tell you one thing, the Luvias has better than the EXIST. That's the handle. Look at the handle. I mean, it has some curves. Look at the handle over here, the knee of the Luvias. What the hell is this? What is these sharp corners here? I'm not buying this. I think this was a fail. It looks a little bit like the old Shimano Sahara. The only place where you would find detail on this reel is on the bail over here. This piece is, it looks very, it has matte finish. It's not chrome. Gunmetal matte finish. And if you see here, look, it has extra cut compared to the Luvias. There is some detail here, but all in all, this reel, I mean, all of these monocoque reels, they look very similar, and this one was just dipped in chrome. There are no cuts on the spool whatsoever. I understand this may protect it against salt water. The Stella has some cuts, not many, but it has some. I don't know, I think it was worth putting some more detail into this reel so you can distinguish. The Caudia, I think, looks very nice in this family, and it's pretty cheap. Now, we have to clarify the models of the two reels right away, because it will be important pretty soon. The Stella over here is C2500S. This reel has the 1000 size body, but the spool size is between 2000 and 2500. It's something right in between there. It's like a 2200 size spool. When I opened the reel live on camera, several people said that the C means smaller spool, and that's why the spool is smaller, but that's not true. The C strictly designates the smaller body. The spool size is supposed to be designated by the spool number and nothing else. The deepness of the spool is by the S over here, but the 2500 is supposed to designate the diameter of the spool. Because right now, what in this reel is 2500 size? The spool is 2200 size and the body is 2000 size. There is nothing 2500 in this reel, except actually there is one thing. This ugly, chunky knob here. I don't know what Shimano was thinking when they put this. This looks like a Cast King knob or a Piscifan knob. Now, the EXIST model is 2500 without the C, but it should have had C also. Now, the spool of the EXIST is a true 2500 and the rotor is a true 2500. So the spool of the EXIST is ever so slightly larger than that spool over there on the Stella. But it's like 1 millimeter, not a big difference, and that's diameter, not radius. However, the body of this reel has to be the same body as in the 2000 size, whatever that size is, but it has to be the same because the 2000 reel is 155 grams. The 2500, the one that I hold in my hand, is 160 grams, only 5 grams more. So, in my opinion, this reel has to have the same body as the 2000 size, again, whatever that size is. So, I would probably designate this reel as a C2500. And as a result of that, it turns out that these two reels are actually pretty good competitors because both of them happen to have, just by pure luck, exactly the same gear ratio, 5.1 to 1. And because they have very similar spools, they end up with the same retrieve speed. And this is the most important thing that gives you idea of the gears and the spool size all together summed up. The retrieve speed, 72 centimeters here, only 70 centimeters here, so you end up with a mere 2 centimeter difference, so almost the same drivetrain in the two reels. Now, the reason I spent so much time talking about the models is because I noticed something very interesting that I had never noticed while ultralight fishing. And it's just because it's hard to make such observations when you're casting 1 gram lures. I cast very heavy, method feeders when I do carp fishing, but I do carp fishing with 1 pound reels. Literally, they weigh 1 pound each. So the whole leverage over there is very different and it's hard to feel such things again. But I did some bass fishing with these reels. With this one, because it's a little bit too heavy for my exotic Japanese rods. And this one, the spool and the rotor are a little bit too big for the tiny guides of my Japanese rods. It just looks weird with this big spool with micro guides. Whatever the reason, I did some bass fishing with some heavier lures, and while on the water, it kept bugging me some sensation that it's kind of easier to retrieve heavy lures with the Stella. And it kept bugging me, but there was nothing I could do while I was bass fishing because I had very different lures on the two rods. They were on different rods. This one was on the X-Prite, this was on a totally different kind of glass rod, and then even the lures were different. So it's absolutely impossible to trust your kind of hunch in this kind of situation. So one day after work, it was like 6 p.m., I went to the lake just to do one thing. No fishing at all. I just wanted to overload both reels, just give them very heavy resistance and make as close to laboratory kind of test as I can. I put them both on exactly the same rod and I tied clips on the line and I was using the same lure, so I put exactly the same resistance. And then on top of that, I was moving the boat with 1 mile while I was retrieving. just because I wanted some heavy resistance. I really wanted to overload the reels, the gears, the drivetrain, so I can test the efficiency of the power delivery of the drivetrain. And to my shock, I was 100% right. And not only I was 100% right, but the difference is not even small. It was much easier to retrieve the lure with that heavy resistance with the Stella compared to the EXIST. I'll even show you a few short excerpts from that video on the lake. Okay, I'm gonna give you just one demo. Look at this ridiculous lure. I'm gonna cast it a little bit. You have to see the total resistance that is hitting the reel between the lure and the boat moving with 1 mile per hour. We have some good resistance. Okay, I'm starting. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's the speed. You can see this rod. I mean, there is good resistance, folks, coming to this reel. And what I noticed, folks, is that the Stella, it is significantly, I will use the word significantly, it is significantly easier to reel this lure, folks, with all of this resistance with the Stella. I couldn't find anything in the dimensions of these two reels to explain why the Stella feels so much more powerful under load. And I have to specify under load because with a very light load it's really hard to tell, and maybe it doesn't even matter. But once you really load them, my gosh, it feels like you need to put twice as much effort here at the handle to do the exact same work that you're doing with the Stella. Because remember, both reels have 70 centimeters retrieve speed. Okay, 72 centimeters here, 70 here. But the 2 centimeters do not explain the huge difference in extra effort that I have to put over here. Now, the rotor on the EXIST is ever so slightly larger. It's like 1.5 millimeters larger. I actually measured them. But again, 1.5 millimeters extra, how can that explain like having to put twice as much, force at the handle? Talking about the handle, the Stella uses a 45 millimeter handle, while the EXIST uses a huge 50 millimeter handle. This is a direct 10% advantage of leverage that you can use this exactly against the amount of work you are doing. I don't know, I'm just reporting my observations, and my gosh, you have to put a lot more energy retrieving the same heavy lure in the EXIST compared to the Stella. Those of you that fish both spinning and bait casting reels and have some high-end bait casting reels, especially BFS reels, when you test them in Cabela's, you turn the handle, you don't feel the gears when they're empty. This is how this reel feels. I have never felt that in a spinning reel. Again, my Vanquish, perfect. I have some Vanfords after I grease them. I put some. I mean, they feel really, really good now, but they have never felt that kind of weightless and disconnected from the gears. This thing here, folks, is completely disconnected from the gears. I don't care how good your reel is, it doesn't feel like this. And once you try this reel, you're gonna start feeling stuff in all of your other reels. It's not just the completely silent, completely noise-free, it's also kind of completely feeling nothing. It's almost unnatural and artificial. Hard to explain until you feel it. Now, my EXIST was a little noisy out of the box, and I put some 20 good hours of fishing with this reel and it's still just as noisy and the resistance is the same. Now in my experience, the resistance on these Daiwa reels, this one and the Luvias, is pretty stubborn, and sometimes the noises, the out of the box noises, will go away before the resistance themselves. But anyway, both the resistance and the noises are about the same. But you know, I often tell people, don't worry about this, you will never hear these noises on the water. And I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't, except when I really focused. I thought, okay, can I, if I really focus, can I hear them? And okay, if there is no road noise around me and I really focus, then yeah, I was actually able to hear these noises on the boat, on the water. But you have to be some kind of really self-destructive person to, instead of focus on fishing and enjoy the fact that you have a boat and you're on the water and you can afford such a reel in the first place, focus on some stupid noise. So anyway, I really enjoyed all 20 hours of fishing this reel. If you expected me to say that, you know, this one is just 10 times better than this in terms of fishing, no. I mean, I still prefer this one because it's different, and this one is not that different. To tell you the truth, it feels a little bit like my Vanquish. It's not completely perfect, but it's pretty much perfect. And okay, I feel the gears kind of more connected to the handle and the rotor. I feel what I'm doing. It's not completely disconnected like over there in the Stella. But it's a really amazing, a really sharp feeling reel. And I have to tell you, if you compare this reel to the Luvias, even though my Luvias it was silent out of the box, it's still silent, it's still tight. I mean, this reel will impress people. But still, if you compare it back to back with the EXIST feels nicer, man. You will immediately notice different kind of feeling, and notice that this one feels a little plasticky. This magnesium frame, I don't know how, I mean, gives some kind of, I don't know if it's the rigidity that gives some extra rigidity, or maybe all of the tolerances, because it's more expensive, all of the tolerances are a little bit better. But an EXIST will feel nicer than a Luvias. It's just different kind of tightness and feeling and connectedness. It's a very sharp feeling reel, and I really enjoyed fishing with this reel. One thing that is pretty disappointing in the EXIST though, much more disappointing than the few noises that you will hear, is the resistance. I have a 50mm handle here and I should feel absolutely zero resistance in this reel. After all of the videos that Daiwa made about the air drive, the main shaft, air spool, air everything, air, and then they jack a huge 15mm handle, and there is still resistance, man. Where is air? Look at the brakes on this thing. 20 hours. Look at the brakes on this. This is a, I mean, how can this thing has so much resistance? How many hours I have to put until I stop feeling the resistance? Now, again, to be honest, even the resistance when you start fishing larger baits like for bass, I mean, the resistance of the reel itself, it's such a small portion of the overall load. Like you have friction from the line itself going through the guides and then the lure. So I think the resistance of the reel is like, I don't know, maybe 0.5% of all of the, maybe 1% of all of the resistance that you feel. So even that ends up not being a factor on the water, but I will not forgive that. Even if I only feel that in my room, I will not forgive that to Daiwa. If you are gonna make all of these damn videos about the air drive and the air shaft and the air design of everything, then you better make sure your reel doesn't have resistance. The resistance on the Stella is probably just as unbelievable as the feeling, as the finesse feeling of the reel. Now this is a 1000 size body with a 2200 size spool and rotor. How is there no resistance here? I mean, we're talking about less resistance than the new Daiwa Presso. I mean, I know I have a larger handle here, but I'm telling you, this reel, I mean, if you can make such low resistance, you don't need to improve this. After this, it doesn't matter anymore. How is that? Look how big this rotor is. Maybe because I'm not lifting the spool, I don't understand. How is there no resistance here? This may be the key, because Daiwa is lifting up and down the spool pretty fast, and that's work that has to be done by the handle. And here the spool sits on the same place. I don't know, whatever the reason, the resistance in this reel is absolutely shockingly low. Then this thing here has some disappointing things too. I already mentioned the huge, chunky, obnoxious knob. Shimano already had the perfect knob developed. I mean, what? Okay, I don't want to go on another tangent. But what's disappointing with this reel is the weight. It's too much. This reel, as you see it, with the line is 179 grams. This, my friends, will not fit, especially if you're trying to tell me that this is a 1000 size body. This reel, I try to fit it on many rods, will not fit on one of these exotic Japanese rods. And I'm saying that because if you buy the 2000 size model, you only save 5 grams. So it will be 173. So this is a whatever $800 reel, and it will be too heavy for a $300 rod. This is, I don't know, they should have cut something. I mean, everything is amazing. I want them to keep it as is, but they should have cut something somewhere. To give you an idea, this is the C model 2500. This is 2500 that's not C, 163 grams with the line. And this is a 16 gram difference. And as a result of that, believe it or not, when I was jigging with both reels, I find some kind of, I say as a result of that, I attribute it to the extra weight, but I find some kind of, of numbness and no sensitivity and dead feeling when you're trying to hop a jig. You know, this little nickel worm. It had its 3-inch nickel worm, and with also a 2.5 gram jig head, and hopping around rocks over there, trying to feel it. Feels kind of dead, I gotta tell you. I don't know if it's this thick knob, I don't know if it's the extra weight, but if you're gonna be hopping something as light as a nickel worm, you will prefer resistance or not, you will prefer doing it with this reel. It's just more sensitive. I don't know, I can feel everything. I don't know if it's the reel, maybe even the gears, maybe the resistance here helps sensitivity, maybe the knob has more contact. I don't know how to describe it, but again, for pure sensitivity, you know, trying to feel stuff, this one feels nicer. Let's look at spool oscillation now. Much advertised feature on the Shimano. This is the EXIST though. Look at how fast the spool is going up and down. And make sure I'm spinning the handle with the same speed, of course. Or at least if you confirm the rotor is spinning with about the same speed, then I'm doing it right. Now let's try to do about the same thing with the Shimano. Look at this. My God. It's like it's not moving at all. Absolutely stupid, slow spool oscillation. Does it make a difference though? This is the line lay of the Stella. Yes, it is flat. Yes, it is impeccable. This is the knot of, I have a few feet of leader line that I didn't want to throw. Yes, it is flat. Yes, it is impeccable. But it was already impeccable. Go look at my videos of my Vanquish and my Vanforts, all of my Vanforts. Look at the videos of my Complex XR, my Soiree XR, and tell me that those reels don't have a perfectly flat line lay. On top of that, what's wrong with this line lay? I'm a picky guy, but I have no problem with this line lay. Maybe, yes, it's not perfect, but honestly, this doesn't bother me, it doesn't annoy me. I mean, this is a good line lay. And on top of that, I casted and casted again exactly the same lures with the two reels, which have, I mean, almost the same line, 5-pound mono from the same vendor, the same lures with the same rods. And folks, I cannot tell you which of them casts farther. I understand that the line lay should yada yada yada, but I cannot with my eyes see the difference. At the end, you will get things like which rod are you using, what's the aerodynamics of the lure, what's the wind on that day, how good of a caster you are, how about your own technique. These kind of things will have much bigger percent difference than whatever objectively the difference between the two reels is. Here is one thing in the Stella that I really don't care about though. Look at this little crack here where the line has to go when you flip the spool or when you flip the bell and you start reeling. Now, I know what Shimano said about this, yada yada, to prevent loops, keep tension. You know, this is an example when manufacturers try to solve problems that don't exist. This problem never existed. What are you doing? I actually had my line get caught here several times. With open bail, the line is still caught here. I don't like this thing one bit. I don't care for it. I never had loops on my Shimano reels. I don't understand this thing, and I don't understand the thick and ugly and soft knob on this reel. I don't know how I made it this far in the video without talking about it, but for what it's worth, Daiwa completely, perfectly solved the drag clicker issue. My God, here is the drag clicker. It's better to hear my fishing videos actually, because here the acoustics of the room will really change it. So watch the fishing videos for that, but for what it's worth, here is how it sounds now. The drag clicker is now not only loud, but crisp, vibrant. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not going to open it to show you, but I looked, folks, as close as I could, and I couldn't find anything different in the design of this drag clicker compared to my Luvias over there. So whatever tuning they did, not even the tension on the spring, even the spring is not tighter. As a matter of fact, the spring here feels pretty loose. I don't know what they did. It just beats me. But the design is still the same, but they did some fine tuning and it just feels and sounds amazing now. And Daiwa, please bring this design down to the legalis as soon as possible. Now the Stella over here was originally pretty quiet. I mean, disappointingly quiet because I mean this is such an expensive reel. I want to enjoy listening the action of the reel, but Mr. Gary did authorize me tampering with the spring mechanism, and after increasing the angle of the spring from 60 to 90, don't go over 90 degrees there, I think it sounds reasonable now. I think this is loud enough for me. I have no complaints. So you can make the Stella mechanism sound nice. You need very thin fingers with good dexterity, and you need very good eyes to do this, and there is still a few tricks. I mean, it's easy to see what you need to do, but my gosh, is it frustrating to put it back after you open the spring. There are some tricks to putting it back, so I will make a video. I already made a video how to make the Daiwa clickers louder. I'll make a video how to make the Shimano clickers louder too. Folks, if you force me to buy 6 of these reels, but from the 2018 generation, I will buy 3 Stellas and 3 Exists of different models. If you force me to buy only 5 of these reels, I will probably buy 3 Exists and 2 Stellas. That's how I feel. Again, 4, if I have to buy 4, I'll buy 2 and 2. But if it's 5, I'll probably buy more Exists just because it felt more refined to me. Now, in the 2022 generation, if I have to buy 6 of these reels, if you just put a gun to my head and you force me to go and buy 6 of them, my gosh, I will buy 6 Stellas. I don't want even one Exist, folks. I don't want it. I understand that I probably got lucky that my Stella here feels so amazing. And it's also at the same time bad luck that this reel has noises. But I also like how amazing, sophisticated the color. I mean, it looks amazing, folks. The sound is amazing once I adjust it, so no advantage of the Daiwa there. I love this super slow oscillation. I mean, now that I know that it has this power advantage, I don't know where it comes from, but what if I go saltwater fishing? What if I want to use the bigger size for, I don't know, for striper fishing? I want to have the extra power now. I don't know, folks. I mean, this handle here, I find a little bit ugly. This sharp edge here, this handle does not belong on this reel. I don't know. This is how I feel. I would take my chances again. I could be wrong because you buy 3-4 reels and I promise you, you will find some perfect Exist reels and you will find some Stellas with noise. Don't you blame me that I said this and that in my video. But for what it's worth, if I have to buy 6 of them today, I'ma buy me 6 of them Stellas.